We have a Bubba who doesn't want to take a nap and a mama who wants to film. So we're gonna do this today. Hi everybody, my name is Jo and I love to read. Welcome to my September and October wrap up. I almost feel like I need to go back to monthly wrap-ups again, except I like having the variety in my content that I don't do a wrap-up every 4 videos. I like that it is after 2 months, and I mean honestly I feel like I have a bit to say in September, but October, not much at all. Not much at all. I said I had 2 contributing factors to not really finishing anything in October, or maybe 3 or 2, kind of the same factor. The first thing is that I am reading a big book, which has also sort of transitioned into a bit of a boring book, so that's a bit hard. I'll get into that one later. But then also I started writing again, and that's taking up my time as well, my creative interest. Though I do feel the need to fill up my creative well again more than I used to when I used to write when I was working. Because I am at home with Miles at the moment, I set my day, and yesterday, because it was the first day of November and I wanted to start participating in NaNoWriMo, National Novel Writing Month, for those who don't know, but I didn't have an outline yet. I actually got a fair bit of chores done, so I don't know whether having something else that I wanted to do was motivating, but I also spent a lot of time writing. So when it came to the end of the night, when usually had I prioritized all this other stuff, I would be eager to get going and to write some things, but I was pretty worn out and wanting to read. So maybe having a bit more time will be good and will make things benefit to reading and writing at the same time, because to be honest I am a bit worried that my reading is going to fall off because I've started writing again. But I still love reading it again. The book that I'm reading at the moment is not exactly exhilarating, so we'll see. I have my notes of the stuff that I've been reading because I really need it doing these 2 monthly wrap-ups. First book I'm going to talk about is the first in the Trixie Belden series by Julie Campbell, and it is The Mystery of the Mansion. I think that's what it is. There wasn't a lot of mystery substance in this book. It was very much the introductory to the characters and the world and the characters' personalities. Trixie Belden is a long-running mystery series that I think was written in the 80s, something like that. So we have Trixie, who's the boyish, rough main character who always gets into scrapes and doesn't think about things before she barges in. So she's really great as a mystery person, as a mystery main character. And then we have Honey, who's a lot sweeter and softer and more delicate. She is the rich best friend that's just moved in up the hill and has all these things that Trixie always dreamed of having, like horses. And they strike this really good friendship together. So it was a fun book, but we didn't get into the meat of the mystery until the end. We didn't actually get to see how talented Julie Campbell can be as an author until right at the end. So it was, I would say, if you're reading Trixie Belden for the first time, so my mum has collected, I think, the entire series or close to, and I read maybe 2, 3, 4 or so of them as a kid, so I'm wanting to go back and reread the entire series. They're kind of my palette cleanser books for now, and I hope they're going to be a lot of fun as well. But I would say especially if you're an adult going to read this series for the first time, either don't read the first one or prepare to slog through a lot of meaningless action, hanging out together scenes, which I think are just establishing the characters, because a lot of them, Trixie either learns to be a little bit less rash, and then Honey also learns at the same time that she can be really brave and courageous. Oh, someone's got sneezels. There also seemed to be a lot of talk about Trixie doing things and then doing chores, and a lot of her days surrounding doing chores all the time. I don't know whether that was the standard for the day, or a lot of teenagers, or I think there may be 13 or something like that. A lot of kids thought about chores so much in those days, but it almost feels like an after-school special that the author was trying to push into the readers, that the target audience, to do chores and be helpful like Trixie. So I don't know, that was just kind of funny. The only other note I'll say is I do like the conversations in it with fairly mature, not in the sense that the younger audience that it's targeted for will not understand, but they didn't necessarily shy away from mature topics. Like there was actually some talks about mortgages and things like that that kind of, yeah, it was interesting because I wouldn't have necessarily expected in a children's book to have them explain the concept of parents paying off a home loan that is owed by the bank. And I also think it was really interesting that throughout the mystery they used to describe that this mansion that like the old dilapidated mystery mansion is standing on is worth $500,000, and I feel like it wouldn't have been as exciting if they'd actually said it was worth $500,000. So that I always just had a little bit of a giggle at that they, maybe that was the terminology of the time, but it also sounded like to me a gimmick to seem a lot more dramatic or a lot more interesting for the novel. So I will be continuing on with this series. The next book I want to talk about is Beartown, and I do have a physical copy, but I don't know whether I can put it somewhere. My plan was to hold it up when I didn't have a little bunny with me. Beartown by Fredrick Backman, which is probably a very read story at the moment because the third or the last book in the trilogy has come out. But this series really isn't for me, wasn't for me. I was going into, I actually had a really good conversation with Tori from the channel Good Strong Words about this, and I find that I was going into it wanting to read a book about a conversation about rape and sexual assault, and that's not what I got. There was a lot of setup explaining about this is a hockey town and how interesting hockey is and how much hockey controls their life and hockey, and that was fine, but because I didn't go into it knowing that, I went into it for something vastly different. I think I was a bit let down and disappointed. For me, it seemed more of a conversation about how far a town is willing to go to succeed. And in this particular town, they're succeeding in hockey. And that's just not what I thought that I was getting into. So I would say for anybody going into it, just know that there is so much build up to explain to you how hockey controls and takes over this town. There are a lot of really good lines that I really enjoyed. You should see how much I've tabbed up this baby. It's actually in my annotation video because, hey look, I am holding it at the moment. I'm just not looking at my notes at the moment because there were a lot of fantastic lines and a lot of good lines as a new parent that I really enjoyed reading. But on the whole, those one-liners that Fredrick Backman would drop in were raspberries, were not worth the, I don't want to say slugging, it kind of felt like slugging. It was not worth reading this book, so I've decided not to continue on with the series. If anybody wants this book, have heard about it, think it's going to be interesting, and would like an annotated copy, please let me know in the comments below. I annotated this thinking that I was going to love it, and I just didn't. And I would like to, if possible, to give my copy away to someone who's going to enjoy it. So if you really want to have a go at this, I'm happy to send it to anybody in the world free of charge. I'll pay the postage to send it to you. Comment down below. I've mentioned this in my annotation video, but nobody wanted it. I just don't know whether people didn't watch the annotation video, so I'm just going to mention it for the last time. If anybody didn't see the annotation video but saw this one, the annotations I do are very minimal. I just have the coloured tabs and then I use pencil to underline things and occasionally write a few notes. So I'm not a very heavy annotator. If anybody wants it and wants to have a read, just let me know in the comments below. If a couple people comment, then I'll do like a random draw giveaway for it. I don't like doing first in best dress because I feel like that's unfair to the people who can't necessarily watch videos straight away. So I'll just do a giveaway. I'll give it, I don't know, a week. Tends to be as long as people comment. Maybe nobody will want it again and I'll just give it to the op shop and someone can find it there. The next book I want to talk about is Girls in Pants. Who, I'm not sure of the author, but I'll put the cover on the screen. This one I was going to read on ebook and I have decided to DNF it. I don't have a lot of necessarily negative, or I didn't hate the book. It was more that it wasn't gripping me. I'm not in the intended audience. Girls in Pants is for like preteen, early teenage years and sometimes later teenage years. I am a little bit sad that I'm not going to see what happens to these girls, but I feel like I could either read chapter summaries or watch the movies if all of the movies have been made and are out, but it just wasn't necessarily gripping me. I was kind of annoyed at a lot of the characters, particularly Carmen. I feel like she's one who tries so hard to be mature but is just not, and it's frustrating to watch her get annoyed at people in her life when it's actually her that is creating the drama. So just on the whole, it's just not for me. I didn't care to finish it, so I decided not to. The next book I'm going to talk about is A Feast for Crows. This is George R.R. Martin. Despite the fact that it says number 5, it's actually the 4th book in the series. These editions are labelled wrong because they are split into 2. I really wish A Feast for Crow was also split into 2 because I feel like, based on the fact that I've given up around the halfway mark, I think George R.R. Martin has this style where he will, the first half of the book is never as interesting as the later half, and I went into this one, I'm not going to talk in spoilers because I never want spoilers for this myself, and I don't want my wrap-ups to ever have spoilers in them unless I heavily let you guys know. For me, all this epic stuff happened in the end of the last one, and I was really keen to read the aftermath, but it really just wasn't as exciting as I wanted it to be. It's actually the book that I'm slumpy on. I haven't finished it. I have a copy on e-reader and physical, so that because it was such a big book, and because the fact that it's a Game of Thrones, I wanted to read it as one coherent story, and I wanted to give myself as many opportunities to read it as I could, so I also purchased a copy on e-reader. Now I think I will finish it. I just feel a bit slumpy and I need a break, which is why I like reading George R.R. Martin's books in 2 separate things, because I feel like halfway through, and it was only at halfway through that I was feeling ready to give it a break. I started doing a bit of a reading vlog on it, and there were all these bits at the start that were making me interested, but at this point we kind of just feel like we're dum-de-dumming at the moment, and that is really frustrating as a reader. Some of my favorite characters just feel like they're going about the motions and are not pushing forward the plot, or there's other characters that I'm really interested in seeing what they're doing and we're just not in their perspectives. I'm not sure how long I'm going to give it a break for, but I'm not surprised considering it is at the halfway mark. Whenever I sit down to feed Miles and I think about reading it, I just do not want to start it at all. Another book in a similar vein, so in an effort to keep reading, I decided to pick up the next Trixie Belden book, which is The Mystery of the Red Trailer, on e-reader too. And I read a bit of it. It is better than the first one. It does go straight into the mystery, but I don't know, I'm not really sure. I'm just feeling very slumpy, and George R.R. Martin's books have put me into a slump before, so why do I keep reading them? Because I want to know what happens, and I want to know what actually happens, and I'm also really excited to catch up and have that excitement of waiting for a new book to come out, and I do enjoy them. It's just that I think it's put me in a slump and I need to read something really engaging again to remind myself that I love reading, and The Mystery of the Red Trailer was just not it. So that one I've kind of put on pause for now. I'm going to continue on with the series, but it just wasn't super gripping. I'm really sorry if all the baby stuff has been distracting and chaotic. I've tried to keep things as low-key as possible. Here's a cute baby to make up for it. But I then decided that I wanted to start Monstress Volume 1, finally, for Halloween. I had fully intended it to be a book that I'd actually started and finished in October, so I would have something to talk about that I finished in October, but I haven't. I've read a chapter, and I've tried to start into the second chapter, and I'm just into writing at the moment. I think because I've put too much writing on my plate in this first week of Nano, because based on my schedule, I have a conflict. I wasn't ready to start on the 1st of November, but I wanted to start writing the new draft on the 1st of November. So I'm outlining at the same time as I'm writing the first drafts, which is draining my creative well, so that when it's reading time or when I have time to read, I just don't want to do it at all. Fortunately, I'm not getting a lot of reading done, and there's nothing wrong with the Monstress comic. As I'm learning, it's actually a comic. I thought it was a graphic novel. I don't know why, whether it's something that I've subconsciously picked up or some booktubers call it a graphic novel, but it and Saga are in fact comics. And the difference that I'm learning, which maybe correct me if I'm wrong, but between graphic novels and comics seems to be similar to the difference between TV shows and movies. Comics are a lot more serialized, they don't end quickly, there's no clear beginning, middle and end between issues, whereas graphic novels do have a clear start, finish and end. It doesn't mean that they can't be a big series, because as we know, movies, franchises can also be big series, but there is a clear beginning, middle and end between each volume. I have been reading comics, which is really exciting because I thought that I wasn't super into comics. The only main stuff that I've read is up to comics, and then aside from that I just think of superheroes, and that's not it. I'm gonna save talking about Monstress. I actually had written all this stuff down to explain what it is, because I myself don't know what it is, but I think Miles is pretty much at the end of his rope, so I am going to sign off on this vlog. I will be back next in 2 months. I mean, I'll put out new videos, but in 2 months I will do my next wrap up at the end of December, which is absolutely insane. Let's see how many books I can get finished. And I will talk to you guys in my next video. Bye!